Welcome to this video on summarizing readings and taking notes. This is part of a 4 series of videos on critical reading. In this video, we'll look at summarizing a journal article. When we read for a research project, we're trying to understand what research has already been conducted and what debates exist in the literature. To make sense of a body of research papers in a field, we need to read them, obviously, and then organize and group them. There's some ideas for common groupings. There are lots of ways to group whatever you're reading, but these are just some ways to give you ideas as a starting point. You would group papers for the overall message, for results or findings. So all the papers that have similar results you'd group together, or counter results you'd group together. Those that have particular methodologies that you like or you think would support your argument, and those that have done differently. Conceptual or theoretical frameworks in the field, you might group the different ones together. You might look at the main points of the literature review, and perhaps there are points there that can be grouped. Good examples or case studies, counter arguments, and other categories or themes relevant to your research or field. There would be some in there. But you begin sorting through the readings for, your purpose for reading them and how you're going to use them in your own documents. What I want to look at now is summarizing a source text for an overall message. So this is the global view. Most research papers contain an abstract, and in the abstract you'll find a sentence or two about the context within the research takes place, the research problem, the knowledge gap, the purpose of the research, the methods, and the key findings. Now, the whole point of summarizing the overall message of a paper is to get what the paper is about, this global message that can be very useful when you are looking to compare papers, rather than just taking one sentence out of the paper. So once you've identified the components from the abstract, note them down in your own words so that you don't plagiarize, and then go through the article and read it and see if you can add more detail to your notes. Perhaps there were components left out of the abstract and you can add these in. For the overall summary of the article, you're looking for the main purpose and message of the paper, not all the details. You're trying to answer, what is this paper about? And it could be a paragraph or two long. But you can also summarize for specific purposes. So instead of looking at the global meaning of the paper, you can focus on certain aspects of the paper. Looking at the methodologies, for example, you would then focus only on the methods and summarize how the authors conducted the research. You might also focus on the results only and summarize the results. This paper has 3 key findings. Maybe that's what you're focusing on. You might look at the literature review and summarize the literature review. Try to group the review into 2 or 3 points. Jones identifies 3 tensions in the research literature. So what I'm saying is that sometimes you focus on certain aspects of the paper for your summaries. You don't need to always summarize the paper as a whole. So here's an example from this particular paper, and I'm going to read it for you just to show you what I mean. So here are some points taken from the literature review. Little research is being conducted on facilitating access to the general curriculum for students with intellectual disabilities. The research literature shows few investigations on the effects of specific instructional manipulations on the performance of students with intellectual disabilities in the general curriculum. Self-determination has been strongly associated with enhanced motivation and positive learning outcomes. So you're summarizing that from this paper, little research is being conducted, here are the research gaps, and here is a strong association. Those are the 3 things I can take from this literature review. Then if we look at summarizing a research methodology, the purpose of the study was to investigate the effects of self-determined learning model of instruction. on the academic skill performance of 3 junior high school students with moderate to severe intellectual disabilities. The participants had a central role in identifying both target skills and the student-directed or augmentative learning strategy. The academic skills taught were aligned to the district general curriculum, and extended benchmarks were individually determined. Data were collected 2 to 4 times a week during the baseline and training conditions. Probe maintenance data were collected at least once per week up to 3.5 months. To assess the effect of the intervention, a multiple baseline across individual designs was used. The experimental design included 3 experimental conditions: baseline, intervention, and maintenance. So you can see from that summary that we're really focusing on how this study was conducted. Then if we look at the findings of the present study suggest that students with moderate to severe disabilities can use student-directed learning strategies, specifically goal setting, self-monitoring, and self-instruction, to promote their access to the general curriculum. Instruction to promote self-determination can serve as a springboard for general education access. This study suggests that when students with intellectual disabilities are systematically taught to engage in self-regulation, problem-solving, and to use a self-directed learning strategies, they can acquire academic skills. So you can see the focus is on highlighting the findings of the study. Now, often when people are starting to read the literature in a field, they're starting a literature review, they begin to feel really overwhelmed by the amount of reading they have to do. So if you are feeling overwhelmed, one strategy is to summarize a journal article in a paragraph or 2, and then write another paragraph on why you think this article is important and relevant to your paper or your project. Then do the same for another journal article on the same topic, and after that compare the two summaries. What similarities are there? What differences? What sense can you make of the topic from comparing these two? Once you've done that, add another paper into the mix and then continue from there. I just wanted to note that it's really important to separate your summaries from your interpretations so that you cite accurately and appropriately without plagiarizing. And this is mostly because doing a thesis is a long-term project, and you might forget that these are notes taken from an article and not your interpretation. So now I want to look at linking summaries to your arguments, and I want you to think about some of these questions that you might ask yourself. So this is really about taking notes, how you would take notes on an article. So you might look at the currency, how recent is the article? If it's older than 10 years, do you have to make an argument for why it's important? Is it classic? Is it written by a key author? Is the article or book or chapter peer-reviewed? Is it written by an authority? It's important to know this because then you can draw on that authority's expertise to help promote your argument. You can draw on the authority to say, although I think this authority also thinks this. What type of evidence has the author provided, and what data was provided? So this is where you explain how that source text will support your arguments. What type of knowledge is in the article? Theoretical, research, practical knowledge, and there may be other kinds of knowledge specifically for your discipline. But the reason why this is important is that if you are developing a conceptual framework, then you might want to group papers according to that type of knowledge, that theoretical knowledge. So it just helps you to understand the article more, the source text more, if you know what type of knowledge you're looking for. What perspective or point of view do the authors write from? What framework do they use? What assumptions are they making? And what questions do you have about this? Can I draw a diagram to represent the ideas in this paper? That's often a really useful way of helping you to summarize. Am I convinced by the arguments and evidence? And if I am, what can I use from this article to show in my own writing? What points do you want to make about this article in relation to your own study? Does it support your argument? Is it a counter-argument? Can you use it as a good example or case study of a similar study? Will it help with your own theoretical formulations? Perhaps it supports your choice of methods. So you're looking at how can I use this paper to forward it in some way in my paper. What quotes can I use? And remember to quote the page number. And what connections can I make between this and other readings? Really what you're trying to say is, am I convinced? And you may feel that you're not equipped to critique an academic text conducted by experienced researchers and one that has been peer-reviewed. But here's some things that you can think about that might help you to critique the paper. How does the research relate to your own experience or work practice? This might just give you an insight into something to say. Do the authors achieve what they set out to do? Sometimes papers promise more than they deliver. Do the conclusions tell us something new? Does the research add insight? And a critique doesn't have to be negative. You can show how valuable this research is by indicating what makes it valuable. Use a counter-argument from another paper to present a contrasting perspective, or perhaps to question assumptions. So just a quick reminder that a summary is a global view of the whole paper in a paragraph or two. It's what the paper is about. This paper is about. A paraphrase is rephrasing one point in the paper. And to avoid plagiarizing, you need to change the words and the sentence structure of the original source. And both need to be referenced. Don't forget to note all the referencing details, including publisher, place of publication, page numbers, because working on a thesis is a long-term project and you may not return to these notes for a while. Thank you for watching this video, and be sure to watch the others in the series, and best of luck with your writing.